On-Site Handymen serves the Lake Martin and Auburn region for all of your home projects, flooring, fencing, and lawn care needs. Contact Josh Brewer at 256-749-1928 to get started today.
It came across the street and went right through the middle of our historic sanctuary. So the biggest shock with all of that was that building was built in 1856. The top portion of the steeple got knocked off in 1898 when a hurricane came through. Other than that, there had not been any major damage to the building since 1856. So I guess you'd say, in some sense, everybody just sort of assumed, well, that's a safe place to be. If anybody had taken shelter in the sanctuary, they would have not survived. They would not have survived. The thing that I have said repeatedly since the tornado is that the blessings that have come through it and out of it, they so far outweigh the challenges. And the first one is that it happened at 3 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon, when, as far as the city of Wetumpka is concerned, if a tornado was going to hit the downtown area, you could not have picked a better time. It hit on this side of the river, not on the side where businesses and shops and restaurants are. There was no one at First Baptist or First Presbyterian, and most folks were either hunkered down at home or out doing stuff. So the fact that there was no loss of life when you look at the level of destruction is absolutely amazing. We at First Presbyterian were devastated, to say the least. The sanctuary for us, the severity of the destruction was a little hard to stomach. Not that there's any disaster that's easier than another, but to see it just ripped apart and spread all over the place, that was hard. Interestingly enough, the church owns 2 sanctuary Bibles, and when I say sanctuary Bible, I mean, they're 18-inch by 20-inch Bibles, parchment paper, that date back to the original sanctuary. So that one of them is copyright 1856 and one of them is 1857. The 1856 one was in the sanctuary, and it sat on a small wooden table, and it was open. That Bible survived the tornado. While they were digging to make sure there wasn't anybody in the sanctuary, one of the first responders came across the Bible and brought it out. It got wet, but other than that, it did not receive really any damage to speak of. So that one survived. The other one sat on a piece of furniture in this wing of the church called the East Wing. That hallway that it sat in was completely wiped out, but the Bible was unhurt. And so both of those came through, and actually a member of the church took that one. That one got soaked, took it home and lovingly nursed it back to health, dried it out, cleaned it out, and brought it back to us. So we still have that. The communion table, which was not original to the church, but was given in memory of a gentleman who went through seminary sponsored by this church, Mickey O'Brien. His family gave the communion table in his memory, and it survived. We had a couple of fairly ornate chairs in the chancel area, and they made it out. The brass cross that hung on the back wall of the sanctuary was undisturbed. The wall collapsed, but the cross made it. We're sitting in my office now, and it's almost in the same spot it used to be in. It was a little bit further down the hall. It completely collapsed. There was no roof on it. The walls got blown down. But my upright bass, Bertha, my dear sweet Bertha, was sitting on the floor in front of my desk. And when the office collapsed, the love seat in my office got pushed up next to my desk, and Bertha rode out the storm in that little pocket. And the video that went viral on Facebook the night of the tornado was the first responders pulling my bass out of the rubble and handing it to me. And it was still in tune. It's little things like that. I had a few irreplaceable books that had been given to me by different people over the years, probably half a dozen or so of them. And every one of those made it through the storm. 90% of my library wound up in eclectic somewhere. But, you know, just little things like that. Most of the irreplaceable stuff, small things, survived. I think probably the neatest thing that survived was our bell, which the bell sat about 30 feet off the ground inside the steeple, obviously. And we used to ring it with a rope. It was still on a big carriage wheel, and you pull the rope and the bell rotated and rang. The steeple twisted and fell out into the yard, and the bell landed in the yard. But up until that moment, I was one of about half a dozen people that had ever laid eyes on the bell, because you had to climb up these rickety ladders in the steeple to get to it. And so all of a sudden, this entire church family, there's the bell. And so when it was pulled out of the wreckage, we set it on blocks of wood out in the parking lot so everybody could see it. It's had a mint date of 1857 on it. And it sat there for several months before we found a company in Louisiana that repurposed it for us, and they came and picked it up. And there was no damage to the bell. The carriage that held it was destroyed, but they fabricated a new one, and then it got put back in. So it's back in its normal spot, and we still ring it with a rope. So we did a few things with the wood that we salvaged from the old building. The sanctuary was built almost entirely out of heart pine that was forested and milled on this site. The wood all came from very nearby. It was all Wetumpka wood, I guess you'd say. It was pretty obvious at the beginning that in our rebuilding, it would not have been cost effective to try and repurpose that wood to build the building out of. The old sanctuary did not have any exposed beams or anything in it, so there really wasn't any point in spending extra money to reuse wood that nobody could see. So we piled it all up and inventoried it, and then began the process of kind of farming it out to people who do woodwork. Some church members got some of it. Some people who live in the Wetumpka community got some of it. A couple of different artists, we were intentional about getting some of it to them because they were going to make some things for us. So our conference table in the library session room is all made from wood that came from the sanctuary. This little coffee table in my office is wood from the sanctuary. My desk is all made from wood from the sanctuary. Those shelves on the wall right there are made, all the wood came from the sanctuary. So we still have some of this wood in the area. It's not on site anymore. We've actually made some of that available to hometown takeover folks if they decided they wanted to use some old wood in any of their projects. And that's what we intend to do with the rest of it. I don't know that the church really has any further application for it, but we decided we'd hang on to it. And if people who do woodwork wanted to do something, then we let them have it. Since it was founded in 1836, First Presbyterian has been committed to being a church for the community, not just people who join it as Presbyterians. And that has not changed. So we joke about the fact that we have the best piece of real estate in the entire city, and we do. If you come across the river bridge, if you don't turn your steering wheel to the left or right, you're going to run right into our church. You can't ask for better than that in terms of visibility. And I think that was the main reason that leadership was so committed to putting the outside back the way it used to be. It's a comfort to people. And we're good with that. We like the fact that people are comforted when they come across the bridge and see this church. Do we hope that more people will allow that to cause them to come inside and see what's going on ministry-wise? Of course we do. But we're not going to dismiss the fact that for some people that's all the witness we're ever going to have, and we're okay with that. That's part of why we wanted it to not just look like the old church, but to be here. hopefully there will not be another catastrophic weather event in Wetumpka. But until something else like that happens, we want this church to continue to be a beacon of the presence of God to people. The frustrating part for us is that we've finished this rebuild in the midst of a pandemic and we can't fully open the church. We're dealing with that, and we've opened it up as much as we can, but I don't mind saying that's a tremendous frustration, because all this time, effort, and energy have gone into creating this space that's user-friendly and all that, and we can't use it very much. But this too will pass. I think the thing that speaks the loudest to me about who this church is, Wetumpka wasn't on a whole lot of people's radar until the tornado. And especially when a church, a historic church, is destroyed, that garners a lot of attention. We received a tremendous outpouring of prayer and support and financial gift from people all over the country and really all over the world. We have a missionary partnership in Mozambique. They took up an offering and sent it to us. We got a contribution from Mozambique to rebuild our church. But we had really good insurance, and we didn't need a whole lot of money out of pocket to rebuild. And again, the leadership of the church said, well, we need to invest that in our community. And so we have. The leadership of the church took the money that was given that we didn't need for ourselves and invested it. And the income from that investment will bankroll community ministry that's aimed at helping people who need help getting their house back in good shape. Not just from tornado damage, but from people who live at the poverty level or near it who need things done to their house and can't afford it. We assisted folks to the tune of about $30,000 in 2019, the year of the tornado. This year we're on tap to sink between $60,000 and $75,000 into the community, helping people. That's what being church is all about. So that's another one of those blessings that came. People sent blessing to this church specifically, and this church said, we don't need it for us, so we need to share it. And rather than stick it in the bank for a rainy day, they said, let's invest it so that it will fund ministry forever. That's pretty smart, I think. Where we sit, where you and I are sitting right now, to me, is a tangible representation of the good that can come out of tragedy. Do we miss the old building? I most certainly do. I miss its smells. I miss the feel of it. I miss the heritage of it. But when I walk into the newly rebuilt sanctuary, I don't miss it that much. I'm reminded that God's always in the future doing something new, and we just have to get on board with it. It's a wonderful opportunity.